Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour. And today I have one of my former colleagues and friends, Bill Cornhoff, with us. So Bill, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
And Bill and I worked together probably like 10 years ago. So it was a while, and we both have had life unfold for us in ways probably very unexpectedly since we last got a chance to really catch up. But Bill is now an Instagram and TikTok influencer on the topics of depression, shame, and sobriety. In just a short few months, maybe up to a year, he's gained a following in the thousands. So at the end of this, I'm going to give you guys his handles so you can follow him as well. But Bill, I would love to hear more from you of like, why did you start building a platform? Like, why this passion around shame, depression, sobriety, mental health? I want to hear how you rose into wanting to share.
I grew up in a loving family in Solon, Ohio. I was a Catholic school kid. I had a twin brother. We had Sunday dinners at grandma's. Very normal growing up. But under that kind of Norman Rockwell painting, there was a different struggle going on. I was bullied, relentlessly bullied, teased for weight, which developed into bulimia. And I never really unpacked that or dealt with that, I should say, when I was younger. And then as adulthood brought success, it also brought a lot of loss. I moved to Florida. I fell in love, had a house, had a big career. But, life had other plans for me, I guess. And the career derailed, mental health issues crept in, my boyfriend died, addiction crept in, and just everything just opened up with the grief, like mentally, spiritually, physically. It just broke me. And I found myself at one point, just suicidal. And relapse was also a part of my story there within that too. And so for me, it was clawing my way back out of that. It was not easy. It was very lonely. And I really don't want anyone else to ever feel like that. And that's my main driver for kind of, sharing. And I like to do it with a little grit, a little humor, and a soft heart.
And a little sass. I've seen you.
That would be it.
That's cool. So, let's go back to where you opened the conversation, because I didn't know this about you. And I think a lot of people can relate to maybe a lot of our deep-rooted issues really did start in childhood. And we don't have to unpack the entire childhood, but as it relates to mental health, the bullying led to bulimia. And so, I know that in my audience of listeners, I've had people struggle with eating disorders. So maybe just talk a little bit about like that through line of maybe how that continued into some of the deeper spins that happened for you.
I think what happened, the big drive or thing from that was, I had no self-worth. And I had no self-worth to the point where I believed in God, but I just didn't think God cared about me. And especially when I started to lose everything. Yeah. And when you have no self-worth, you let the wrong people into your life, or you're vulnerable at that point to let the wrong people in. And somehow these people find you and you start making bad decisions and you don't really learn how to take care of yourself or love yourself. And I think that was a big kind of driver where my addiction really manifested itself from.
Yeah, I get that. And I have my own addictions. Like in my family, I have a lot of alcoholism, and I've mentioned that to you. And then the audience has heard me talk about my brother a lot, which unfortunately I lost to a drowning incident over a year ago. And it's really painful. So when you talk about like losing your boyfriend, that level of grieving when you've lost something that almost feels like I know you have a twin and like you get this sibling thing, but whether it's a sibling or a lover, completely different loss profile. But when you're close with someone like that, it's like another part of you, so it leaves a hole.
I cannot prepare anyone for the pain of losing someone you're in love with. It's totally different. I'm not saying it's worse. It's just
different. Yes.
It was like waking up with terminal cancer and being stabbed in the stomach every morning for a while.
Sounds like what my sister-in-law would say about losing my brother.
Yeah, it was that. The grieving process was hard. The only thing I could say about it is that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And in the same flip side, so take as much time as you need. And there's no right or wrong way, though, to support somebody who's grieving. So if people aren't showing up for you the way you expect them to, it doesn't mean they don't love you.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I learned from that was those who love us will miss us. So sorry.
No, I knew. I cry when I talk about it.
But those who love us will miss us. So treasure the time you have with somebody and, be kind to each other.
I get that a lot. I think I look back at my time with my brother and I don't regret anything. I just wish I had more. That's how I look at it. Very grateful though. I'm sure you see signs from your lover knowing that he's around. I get signs from my brother all the time. The dragonfly is a really big one for me. As soon as he passed, there was dragonflies everywhere. My house, my sister-in-law's house, like they were just everywhere and they continue to be. So
Nice.
it's kind of cool when you run into something like that. Have you ran into any like specific signs?
I see him like when the sun hits the clouds for some reason. That's typically when I see him.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I swear, I mean, people, he would call me weird hippie for this, but I swear I'm not being one. Like, I swear the minute he passed away, I felt it because I literally called my mom 5 minutes after and said, I think he died. And I was just like a mess. I do believe in kind of like that spirits or there's some kind of higher connection, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, there is. And I like talking about that, and I didn't mean to invoke the tears because I know they're there. But I think it's really important for people to have hope, and that's kind of part of your message. Like, to think that there's no connection on the other side is a very lonely place for us that are still here and mourning that loss. So I look very forward to seeing signs. I don't care if people think I'm crazy. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. It makes me feel good.
Connection is so important. Why we're here. I believe it's strong enough to exist while we're gone too. And
yeah, I do believe that.
Connection is really the opposite of sobriety. It's honestly being connected to people is what keeps you sober. So I do believe there's a big power, more of a power to it than we realize.
I do agree with that. So I want to talk a little bit because you talked about self-worth. And when I was at my lowest point, I would say self-worth was the root of my problem too. Like, my addiction was work. I worked to the point that I made it my first priority. And here I have 4 kids, a husband, myself. Like, I was at the bottom of the priority list because I was so busy making sure that low self-worth that I had was filled by validation and approval and accolades, right? And so it was a tough road to shift all that perspective within myself, to start loving myself, to start giving myself permission to slow down. There's something in a lot of the pre-talking that we were doing, and even in your introduction, that is where I'm going to take this conversation. And a lot of it was rooted in shame because I was shameful of at the core of who I was. And what an awful thing to think about yourself, because we're all beautiful souls. And so I'd love for you, I know you get really passionate when you talk about shame. I'd love for you to share kind of like, what are some lessons you've learned about shame, and what would you wish listeners knew about shame?
I know that like the most recent would be like getting help for your mental health. Because when I was like suicidal, which I hate to admit, but I knew something was off. I knew I'd hit a low that I had never seen before. And I knew it, and I didn't know how to get out of it. It was very dark. I feel like, to me, that's what hell is. I really feel like I went there and back. And I didn't want one more thing wrong with me. I was so ashamed. I didn't want one more fucking Sergeant Parker. Like,
no, you curse on here, so it's fine.
One more fucking thing wrong with me.
Say it like that.
I just did it. I was like, how much do I have to be like this grieving over my boyfriend? I have addiction. Like, I don't want any more problems. And I already had depression, anxiety. Well, I had bipolar disorder. And I had a lot of shame. I knew the diagnosis was coming. Like, I knew it for like a year, but I didn't want to deal with it. So I don't know if anyone's ever tried to get sober unmedicated while diagnosed bipolar, but it's not that easy. Yeah. Especially because you're dealing with things like character defects and whatnot that you got to kind of acknowledge and overcome. So that feedback loop's difficult. Once I started getting my medication, it was like I was not drowning in depression anymore. I had my arm floating. You could take me anywhere. I was good to go. So I would just treat that if you feel like something's off, just go get it checked out like a cold. Getting your mental health taken care of should be no bigger deal than going to the doctor for a cold. It should honestly be the same. And we need to stop shaming people around that and talk more about it, in my opinion.
I agree. And for me, I have, probably not surprising to anybody who knows me, but I have ADHD. And I went, yeah, so weird, right? No, but I went unmedicated for years. But I was wondering, when you have ADHD, you have a lot of highs and lows. So not necessarily like bipolar and being manic, but there is that like high, low, there is some manic behavior. There's a lot of anxiety because anxiety and ADHD are sisters. If I'm having a big ADHD moment, typically my anxiety can be crippling. So that's on my extreme sides. I have crippling anxiety, or had. Watch my words because I've been using stuff. But what I like about what you're saying is that even for someone like me, I'm a hippie, I'm a naturalist. I don't like to put medicine in my body. But guess what? I fucking needed it. And when I finally got off that narrative in my head, kind of what you were talking about, that I was like, oh, there's a shame in taking medicine. I should be able to control myself. I should be able to take some supplements and figure this shit out. When that doesn't work, what do? You know, you're not supposed, like, don't torture yourself. Go get some help. And so I remember the first time I booked an appointment with the psychiatrist, I cried because I was like, I'm not crazy, or maybe I am crazy. Like, you know, like that whole narrative's going
crazy.
that whole narrative's going on in my head. But once I got my medication, I was like, oh dear God, thank you.
I always felt like it was like honestly getting my arm floaties because I just was so drowning. And I just remember like, oh, I'm good to go now. Like it was just like,
and then it gives you the energy to tackle, because bipolar often is a indication of severe trauma. ADHD, crippling anxiety, byproduct of trauma. So when in an episode and you can't even regulate yourself because you're like out in crazy town. So if you're ready to tackle your healing, get on your meds, you know, and give yourself a fighting chance to do the work. So at least that's my opinion.
Oh no, I agree. My biggest driver for not getting medication too when it came to bipolar disorder, I shouldn't say my biggest, one of the was I didn't want to gain weight because and that kind of goes back to the whole bulimia thing.
Yes, and see how that cycle, that's what I was like, let's unpack all of this, because
like, Jesus. And that's just kind of like, that's just sad. You know what I mean? I don't mean that in a belittling kind of way to anyone that feels the same or struggling. I mean it like, it's sad that I couldn't get help because I was afraid I'd get fat. Like that's so stupid on my part. You know what I mean? So, but it did. It was I just remembered ignoring it. And that was one of the big drivers.
So what type of like words of encouragement or something might you have for a listener that might be struggling either with their mental health or sobriety, or maybe they don't have either, but they're stuck in their shame cycles and they just can't get out? Like what would you want to say to them?
I guess for me, what I would say to them is you need to move. And I don't mean I mean physically move. If you're stuck in your bed, just get out and get to the living room. And if you can go for a walk, go for a walk. And if you could get to a meeting, get to a meeting. And if you can get to therapy, get to therapy. I know for myself, it was a not two punch, that didn't make sense. But I couldn't do one without the other. I couldn't not be, going to meetings. I had to be in recovery and I had to be in therapy. And it doesn't work for me one without the other. But I always feel like, if I could do it, you could do it. I mean, I lost everything in a short amount of time. I mean, within a 6 month window, my life went from being in love, living in this beautiful house I remodeled, that I spent 6 years remodeling, having this big career, my 2 dogs, and then all of a sudden the dogs were dead, my boyfriend was dead, the house was gone, and I'm in an apartment in Texas, alone and unemployed. And, through all this, and then I'm having to go to rehab, and I'm having to go to therapy, and my friends are 20,000 miles away, or however far it is. And if I can do it, you could do it, I guess. That would be the big thing.
Yeah, I get the goosebumps as you say that, because I think that I say we try, but I'm going to use the I. Like, I remember trying so hard to hold it all together, where really what I needed to do was just let it fall apart. And so that way I could rebuild myself the right way. And not like the one's right or wrong, but I would say in a healthy way, in a way that was self-honoring, self-respected, self-valuing. Like, I look back at our former employer and it was a very narcissistic environment, and I didn't know that I was under narcissism, and I fell for it, and it ended up shrinking. Well, I allowed myself to shrink in that environment. And my dad also passed away when I was there. And because I was trying so hard to prove my value, prove my worth, deal with a loss, I lost myself. And not many people know this that worked with me at the time, but shortly before my resignation fell to the bathroom floor in I had an emotional collapse. I just was looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, I didn't recognize the woman, the leader, the mom, the wife. And I was just like, who the fuck have I become? And just that weight, that gravity of that thought, my knees buckled and I ended up on the floor.
When I was there, I mean, I went through something very traumatic and right around COVID, and I got PTSD from it. And on all levels of leadership, there was awareness of what was going on with me. And they wrote me off. And I got bullied by the president and vice president relentlessly. And and it's clearly up, you know when you're out. You know what I mean? Like, you know when you're out, trust me. Yeah. It was like overnight. One minute they asked me to work escalations, which I did, I was there 7 days a week through Christmas, practically, in like 2021. And then I came in one day and I was out. And I had no idea what was happening. They knew I was in the middle of a mental health crisis, though. And they knew that I disclosed that I had PTSD. And it just was, they used it as a way to get rid of me. They decided that they weren't going to help me. We didn't need to unpack this. That was it. And it made things a lot worse. Yeah. And they didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. They didn't have to. There's other ways. I'm saying you don't have to keep me employed, but give me a severance, send me on my way. But
yeah, and do it with love, do it with care, treat you like a human being,
Yeah, they used it against me and they broke me even more. And watching it happen, I just could not believe it was happening.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry that happened to you, but I think it's an important conversation that we both share, because when you take pride and when you're careered, I mean, A, when you take pride in your career, but B, when you're careered, I mean, I was a senior leader, you were even more senior, I was a senior manager, you're a director. We're not like babies in our career, know what I mean? And so when you go through some type of workplace trauma, when you're seasoned in your career, it's devastating.
Yes, I think both of us too at one point were like the golden child, but like the one to watch. 7 years. It wasn't like,
a short, Yeah.
So it was just, I have a hard time when I see corporations put videos on saying that we're like a family here, because, they did that during orientation. And I can tell you that my family rose up for me, even though they did not. You know what I mean? Right. So that to me, it was difficult too, because there was nurse burnout during COVID. And we were doing a lot about mental health and mental health support for nurses. I'm literally writing the messaging for the organization on how we protect mental health in our nurses. And meanwhile, I'm struggling and getting the shit kicked out of me. Like, it just didn't make sense. You know what I mean? It was so weird. It was so weird.
Yeah, I get that. But, whether you want to call it God, universe, has a way of illuminating what we really are working on. So I hear you say that. And I was like, well, Bill, you were meant to help people with mental health, because even though you had to go through this shitstorm that you've gone through, like if you look back and you click that moment in time, right? You just clock it. You were already on the narrative that is like near and dear to your heart. Unfortunately, you had to go through a lot. A lot. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know the right words for that. I'm just going to use my hands.
Especially my driver back then when I was working, I would say a lot, probably 60, 70 hours a week. And I loved our nurses. I knew the mental distress they were in. I just knew it. And just from talking to them too. And I had a lot of honor for what they were doing. So I think you're right. I think there was probably something back there that kind of clicked.
Yeah. And so now, for me, how my work, I've gone through so many different versions of what I'm calling myself and what I love to do. But what I've kind of landed on, and I've done a shit ton of certifications and stuff, but I'm doing trauma-informed leadership. That's what I am putting my flag in the sand. And I now certify leaders how to be coaches. So that way they can have a different approach with their employees. That's more mental health centric. That's more, gives the employee more self-agency, more self-confidence. So I'm very passionate about what I do because of what I've been through. Yeah. So sometimes we have to go through it so we can rise up and serve. And it's not fair. Like at this point, I am the lone survivor of my family. My mom's passed, my dad's passed, my brother's passed. And so I look at life differently than most people, because I'm like, and I don't know if you feel like this about your boyfriend, but in the work that you're doing, but I look at it like their legacy lives through me. If I stop sharing the message, if I stop helping the world the way I feel like I can, then it's all for naught. So I don't know how you feel about that, but
I feel the same. I feel like something good has to come out of all this. Something, yes. And I don't mean good, just like I mean, on a larger scale for some reason.
Yes.
That's like
I get the goosebumps when you say
something
that.
good from all this loss has to come, and especially when it comes to him. Um,
Yeah, that's like their
yeah,
legacy lives through us. And so our work becomes a little bit more important.
yeah.
I tear up saying this, but I'm really proud of you. I love seeing your rise because you really have been through a lot.
I got hit every aspect in life that life could fall apart. It fell apart, like it really did.
You're like, it did.
I remember thinking God hated me. I remember thinking I was on a TV show in heaven called Punked, and they were just bored of pranking me, just ripping my life apart. Like I couldn't figure out why this was happening to me, and everyone else had this life. And then, what I learned was that God was just trying to get me to wake up, and it took a lot of consequences to do so.
Yeah, that's what I learned
And
about
I had to
myself
stop
too.
blaming God. I had to stop blaming God, and I had to start listening for God, not in the good, but also in the bad.
Yeah, I get that very much because I think like I probably had quite a few signs that I ignored. I'm like, red flag, red flag. No, it's green. It's fine. It's fine. So, well, we're starting to wind down. So, I wanted to ask another question. So, going back to the audience and them listening right now, and it's the empowered half hour, let's go ahead and share an empowering message with them. What do you want them to know? What do you want them to take away? Like, if their life has fallen apart or they're in like some type of workplace, not a good situation, like whatever it is, everything that we've talked about, you can share whatever you want, but let's give some wisdom to the audience.
Let's do it. I know that hitting rock bottom is hard, but every time I've done it twice, I've found my way back, and that's taught me that failure isn't fatal unless you give up. So please don't give up. Another big thing I'd say would say self-reliance is essential, but so is asking for help. I was raised to be strong, but life beat the hell out of me. And it took a lot of strength to reach out and crying at a meeting and texting someone at midnight and finally saying, I need help. That's a sign of strength. That's courage. You're lovable even if you're healing. Shane used to run the show. Now I believe, especially on my good days, that I'm worthy of love, even with scars, even with mistakes, even when the healing isn't done yet. Your dog can read you better than most humans. That's a big thing I learned. She knew when I was off, and she reminds me that loyalty doesn't flinch. And I guess telling the truth, even the ugly kind, is powerful. Your willingness to say the messy, say the real stuff is your superpower. It is what's going to make you matter and save you. Your story will save other people, and not by being perfect, but by being honest.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. I'm sure the audience would like to follow you. So share your handles. How can the audience stay in contact with you?
Oh, shoot. I'm going to have to look at it. I just forgot. I cannot believe that.
That's all right. It happens. I'm like,
it's William_J_C is my Instagram. And the link to my TikTok is.
All right. That's awesome. Yeah. So you guys can reference the show notes. We'll drop the Instagram and the TikTok link so you can follow Bill. What I really want to say, Bill, is just thank you for your vulnerability. I know from my own work that my vulnerability is what heals others. And I am tearing as I say this, but I know this episode is going to hit somebody who needed to hear it. And so just thank you for coming in and being raw and real.
Thank you for inviting me. It was great seeing you. And congratulations on everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'll see you. Stay on, but I'm just waving bye.